He had a wife, a child, and a friendly smile for everyone on the block. But for the woman living next door, that smile was hiding a terrifying obsession, one that would completely shatter her sense of safety. Her story is just one of the chilling accounts we'll be exploring tonight, where the danger wasn't lurking in some dark alley but right next door. We all want to think of our neighborhoods as a safe haven. You know, the familiar streets, the quiet nights, the faces you see every single day. But sometimes that familiarity is just a mask. Behind the closed doors and perfectly trimmed lawns of suburbia, a different kind of darkness can grow. The people we share a fence with can sometimes become the source of our deepest fears. Tonight we are re-looking at 4 stories that prove you can never be too sure about who your neighbors really are. These accounts range from unsettlingly real reported encounters to strange urban legends. But each one is a chilling reminder that the biggest threats can be found exactly where we least expect them. Story 1. The Neighbor Who Built a Fake Life. For a woman we'll call Chloe, moving into a new apartment complex was supposed to be a fresh start. It was a quiet, respectable place, and the neighbors seemed pleasant enough, especially the man who lived right next door, a guy named Todd. He was in his late 30s, had a kind face, and was always ready with a friendly wave or a good morning. He even mentioned in passing that he lived with his wife Sarah and their young son. Chloe didn't think twice about it. He just seemed like a normal, friendly family man. And when you're new to a place, a friendly face is a real comfort. That comfort, however, started to fade. It began with little things. Todd would just so happen to be leaving for work at the exact same time as her every morning. He'd show up at the mailboxes the second she went to check hers. At first, she wrote it off as a coincidence. I mean, it's an apartment building, people run into each other. But the coincidences started stacking up until they formed a pattern she just couldn't ignore. He started knocking on her door with flimsy excuses. Once it was to borrow a cup of sugar. Another time he claimed he'd heard a weird noise and just wanted to make sure she was okay. Each visit stretched on just a little too long. His friendly questions started feeling more like interrogations. He'd ask where she'd been, who she was with, what her plans were for the weekend. That smile, which once seemed so warm, now just felt wrong. Chloe began to feel like she was constantly being watched. She'd be sitting in her own living room and get that creepy feeling that someone was right outside her window. More than once, she looked up just in time to see a shadow dart away. Things took a much darker turn after she politely turned down his invitation to a neighborhood barbecue he claimed he and his wife were hosting. His entire friendly demeanor vanished. That night, she was woken up by loud, aggressive banging on her front door. This wasn't a polite knock, it was the pounding of an angry fist. Terrified, she looked through the peephole and saw Todd standing there, his face twisted with rage. She didn't answer, and after a few minutes of relentless banging that seemed to shake her entire apartment, he finally left. From that point on, Chloe was living in a constant state of fear. The banging incidents happened more often. She'd come home from work to find him just standing in the hallway, waiting for her. He'd peer into her windows when he thought she couldn't see him. She called the police multiple times, but Todd was clever. By the time officers arrived, he'd either be gone or locked back inside his apartment, refusing to answer the door. Without any concrete evidence, the police told her there was little they could do besides keep a record of the incidents. The breaking point finally came during one of her calls to the police. Desperate to prove she wasn't just being paranoid, she mentioned his wife. "Maybe you can talk to his wife, Sarah," she pleaded. "He says they live in apartment 3B. There was a short pause on the other end of the line. When the responding officer arrived a few minutes later, he had a grave look on his face and immediately asked to speak with the building manager. The truth was somehow even creepier than Chloe could have imagined. Todd didn't have a wife or a child. There was no Sarah. The apartment he lived in was a small one-bedroom, and he had been living there all by himself for over 10 years. The neighborhood barbecues, the family stories, the entire life he had presented to her. It was all a lie. A detailed, intricate fantasy designed to make him seem normal and disarming. Armed with this new information about his deception and escalating harassment, the police were finally able to take more serious action. A restraining order was put in place, but the psychological terror he inflicted was a lot harder to get rid of. Story 2. The intruders in the new house. Moving into a new house is supposed to be exciting. It's a blank canvas, a place where you can build new memories and feel safe. For one family, though, their dream home turned into the set of a real-life horror movie just days after they moved in. The couple and their young child had spent their first week unpacking, arranging furniture, and just getting the feel of their new neighborhood. It was a quiet, suburban street, exactly the kind of place where you'd expect to feel safe. But that feeling was violently shattered on their very first Friday night. The family was watching a movie in the living room, surrounded by the last of their unpacked boxes. It was getting late, almost midnight, and the house was silent except for the TV. Suddenly, a loud crash exploded from the back of the house, followed by the sickening sound of splintering wood. The husband shot up, his heart hammering in his chest. Before he could even figure out what was happening, the back door burst open. 4 large, heavily built men stormed into their home. Their faces were hidden by dark masks, and their eyes were cold and menacing. And they were armed. One of them was holding a long, heavy crowbar, and another brandished a handgun, the dark metal glinting under the living room lights. The family was completely frozen in terror. The leader, the one with the gun, pointed it straight at the husband and barked a single terrifying command. On the couch, now. Paralyzed with fear, the family did exactly as they were told and huddled together on the sofa. The child started to cry, a small, terrified whimper in the tense silence. The masked men spread out, their heavy boots thudding on the new floors. They moved with a clear purpose, shining bright flashlights into every corner, behind furniture, and into the open boxes. They were clearly looking for something, or someone. One of the men, the one holding the crowbar, loomed over the family. "Where is it?" he growled, his voice a low, threatening rumble. The husband, trying to keep his own voice from shaking, could only stammer, "Where is what?" We just moved in. We don't have anything of value here." The intruders exchanged confused looks. They kept searching, only now they were more frantic, more aggressive. They tipped over boxes, tossed furniture aside, and ripped pictures right off the walls. It was during this chaos that one of the men muttered something to another. The family couldn't make out the words, but the tone was one of pure frustration and a slow, dawning realization. The man with the gun turned back to the family, his weapon still raised. He just stared at them for a long, terrifying moment, and in that moment, it became sickeningly clear to the family what was happening. These men had made a horrible mistake. They had the wrong house. They were probably looking for the previous owners, who, for all this family knew, could have been into something very, very dangerous. That realization didn't bring any comfort. If anything, it made the situation even more unpredictable. What happens when violent criminals realize they've invaded the home of a totally innocent family? For these men, the answer was chillingly simple. They just left. Without another word, they turned, walked out the same broken door they came in through, and vanished into the night. The family sat there in stunned silence before the husband finally scrambled to call 911. The police arrived and took their statements, but the intruders had been careful. They wore masks and gloves, leaving behind no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing. They were never caught. The family was left to deal with the aftermath, a broken door, a trashed home, and the crippling trauma of having their safe space so brutally violated. They never felt secure in that house again, forever haunted by the memory of those masked men and the terrifying knowledge of how easily a home can become a house of horrors. Story 3. The Vanishing Hitchhiker of the Neighborhood. Not all neighborhood fears come from flesh and blood threats. Some stories are woven into the very fabric of a place, passed down through generations until they become part of the local identity. These are the urban legends, the ghost stories told to both caution and scare. And one of the most persistent and widespread is the tale of the Vanishing Hitchhiker. While versions of this story pop up all over the world, many neighborhoods claim their own specific, chilling version of the tale. One such story comes from a small rural community surrounded by long, dark country roads. For decades, residents have warned newcomers about one particular stretch of road that leads out of town. It's a winding, 2-lane road, completely shrouded by thick woods on either side. It's here, they say, that you might just see her. A young woman standing all alone on the shoulder of the road, thumb out, her face pale in the glow of your headlights. As the legend goes, it always starts the same way. A driver, usually someone kind-hearted traveling late at night, sees the girl and feels they have to stop. She's often described as wearing simple, sometimes old-fashioned clothes, like a thin dress that seems totally wrong for the chilly night air. When she gets in the car, she's quiet and reserved. She gives an address that's just on the other side of town, a few miles down the road. Every person who claims to have picked her up comments on the intense cold that seems to come from her, a chill that sinks deep into the car's seats. The drive is almost always short and silent. The driver might try to make small talk, asking why she's out so late. But her answers are always vague and soft-spoken. Then, as they pull up to the address she gave, they turn to tell her they've arrived, only to find the passenger seat empty. She's just gone. Vanished from a moving car without making a sound, without even the click of a seatbelt or the whisper of a door opening. Confused and seriously unnerved, the driver almost always continues to the address she provided, desperate for some kind of explanation. They knock on the door of an old, weathered house, and an elderly couple often answers, their faces etched with a familiar sadness. The driver starts to explain the bizarre encounter, the girl on the road, the address, her sudden disappearance. Before they can even finish, the couple knows the story all too well. They explain that the driver has just given a ride to their daughter. They'll pull out a faded photograph of a young woman who looks exactly like the hitchhiker, and then they deliver the final, chilling piece of the story. Their daughter was killed in a tragic car accident on that very same stretch of road, many, many years ago. The night the driver picked her up, they explain, was the anniversary of her death. In some versions of the tale, the hitchhiker leaves something behind. A sweater or a scarf the driver lent her for the cold. When the driver later goes to the local cemetery, they find that same item draped over her gravestone. This legend has been a cornerstone of this neighborhood's folklore for as long as anyone can remember. It serves as a ghostly reminder of a local tragedy and taps into that deep-seated fear of lonely roads and the spirits that might just be waiting on them. Story 4. The Human-Faced Dogs of Shibuya. Our final story takes us from the quiet roads of rural America all the way to the bustling, neon-lit streets of Tokyo, Japan. Here, a totally different kind of neighborhood horror took hold back in the 1980s. An urban legend so bizarre and unsettling that it caused a genuine wave of panic. It's the legend of the Jinmenken, or the human-faced dog. Imagine this. You're a restaurant worker in the busy district of Shibuya, taking out the trash at the end of a long shift. In the dimly lit alley behind the building, you spot a stray dog rummaging through the garbage. It looks like a typical mangy mutt, so you try to shoo it away. But as it turns to look at you, your blood runs cold. The creature has the body of a dog, but its face is unnervingly human. Its eyes hold a weary, tired intelligence, and its mouth is set in a human-like expression. Before you can even let out a scream, it speaks to you in a gruff, human voice. "Leave me alone," it growls, before turning and darting back into the shadows. This is the classic Jinmenken encounter. Sightings of these creatures exploded in Japan, particularly between 1989 and 1990. They were reported all over urban areas, seen running alongside highways at incredible speeds, sometimes even overtaking cars. One famous account tells of a driver on an expressway who was shocked to see a dog easily keeping pace with his car. When he glanced over, he saw its human face, which then allegedly said, "Do not look at me." The driver was so startled that he swerved and crashed his car. The origin of the Jinmenken is a total mystery, with a few different theories trying to explain the phenomenon. Some believe they are the spirits of people who died in traffic accidents, their souls somehow fused with a stray animal. Others speculate they are the result of secret genetic experiments gone horribly wrong, creatures that escaped from some hidden lab. A more supernatural explanation suggests they could be a type of mischievous spirit known as a yokai, or maybe just dogs possessed by an evil entity. Despite their terrifying appearance and ability to speak, the Jinmenken are not usually described as aggressive. Their messages are almost always short and dismissive, like, "Mind your own business," Or they might toss an insult at the person who sees them before running off. They are, however, widely considered to be a terrible omen. A Jinmenkan sighting is believed to be a sign of a coming disaster. The legend became so widespread that it caused real hysteria. People would call the police to report sightings, demanding that something be done about the human-faced dogs roaming their neighborhoods. The sheer number of car accidents blamed on Jinmenkan sightings even led some police departments to look into the possibility of their existence. While the panic eventually died down, the legend of the Jinmenkan has survived as a uniquely modern piece of folklore, one that blends the anxieties of urban life with ancient supernatural beliefs. From a stalker hiding in plain sight, to a home invasion born from a terrible mistake, and from ghostly apparitions to monstrous urban legends, these stories show that fear can really find you anywhere. The places we call home aren't always the sanctuaries we want them to be. So, what's the creepiest thing you've ever experienced in your own neighborhood? Let me know down in the comments. And if you have a disturbing story of your own that you think should be in a future video, please feel free to submit it to the email address in the description. Your story could be the next one we share. Thank you for watching. Stay aware and stay safe out there.